Well, this is just where I'm staying, and a couple of other people are staying as well. And then there's just some people here who are just planning tomorrow, and that's all done without me.
So the day before Richard Spencer was supposed to speak at the University of Florida, we get a text to meet him at a undisclosed location about 20 or 30 miles outside Gainesville, in the middle of the countryside, middle of nowhere. Richard Spencer rebranded organized white supremacy and organized racism a few years ago as the alt-right, and he's been the face of that movement ever since.
It's just my charm and charisma, I guess, and nothing else.
So
No, I think it's more than that. It's that the alt-right is talking about ideas that are really powerful and that everyone is thinking about without articulating. And that is white identity, first and foremost. And that there's someone who's willing to talk about it seriously and to embrace it, in fact, is something very new, but it's also something that everyone, in a way, understands that this has to happen.
no one invited Richard Spencer to the University of Florida. He tried to speak there in September. The university said no. And then when he threatened to file a lawsuit against the university eventually relented because of First Amendment reasons.
I don't even know if this is a real concern of anyone, but if anyone thinks that I want to go and speak, do a speech just to the alt-right, that's just simply wrong. That's not what I'm into. I
don't
actually
want to preach to the choir.
I don't want to preach to the choir. And actually, the Q&A is almost always more fun than the actual speech because I get to engage with people.
We are stronger than you, and you will know it. That's why you're ganging up here like some kind of mob.
If they only allow in people who are just nodding or something, like, what are you guys doing?
Right.
I like the back and forth and stuff like that. At the same time, we don't want Antifa who are going to try to there's a difference between, heckling, a little bit of heckling I'm fine with, to be honest. And I actually told the UF security this. I said, if a little bit of heckling, just let them go. It's totally fine. If people try to do something at a level where they're disrupting the speech and I can't go on because they're blocking the stage or something, that's not
Right.
That's not okay. Again, Antifa are violent people, and so you have to bar them. I don't. If someone is going to go to the speech and engage in any kind of violence, not just against me, but against anyone there, then absolutely they can't be allowed.
Okay. So this is turned into a real thing here. We're talking about, $500,000 on security.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about roads closed, bus routes closed. I think if you talk to students on campus, they'll say, some of them are scared. They don't want another Charlottesville. Why, is it, at the end of the day, is it a little selfish? People are scared, and you're making the university spend $500,000.
I am making the university spend that much money? The people who are making the university spend that much money are the ones who are threatening violence. I am not threatening violence. No one in the alt-right is going to try to disrupt the speech or do something that's going to make me or our movement look bad. It just doesn't make sense. The only people who would do something that would engage in violence or try to disrupt something or try to harm anyone are these counter-protesters and detractors.
An hour after his speech at the University of Florida, 3 of Richard Spencer's supporters were seen throwing up Hail Hitlers and eventually fired a shot at counter-protesters. And now they're all sitting in jail on attempted murder charges.
So, I guess I would ask them, what are they really afraid of? And that's not a rhetorical question. They're not, they might be afraid of my ideas, you could say, because they're powerful and so on. But in terms of violence, they're ultimately afraid of these Antifa, the thug element that comes to these things. That's who they should be afraid of. And the other thing, look, I get it that this has become a very expensive event. I never imagined that it would be this expensive for the university. But the fact is, this is where the rubber hits the road when it comes to free speech.
Right.
I mean, this is what it's about. If you can't
Sure.
protect the free speech of a controversial speaker, then you don't really believe in free speech.
Right.
You know,
So-
I could go up and talk about my love of, you know, Santa Claus and birthday cakes and, you know, and so on. It's the most uncontroversial thing you could imagine. And no one would protest, no one would probably attend.
Well,
you know,
but this is the point, though. Like,
Yeah.
the reason, if you are in a bar and you start shooting up Nazi salutes, or you start talking about a white ethno-state, you start talking about genocide, ethnic cleansing, not genocide, ethnic cleansing, as you put it. You know, that's liable to make people very angry. That's liable for people to want to attack you.
So free speech should be limited due to other people's emotions.
I'm not talking. I'm talking about like.
That seems to be an implication of your thought process.
No. I mean, I am saying though, like, your platform is very threatening to these people, is it not?
No, I mean, I'm going to go up there and talk about the necessity of identity, actually for everyone, and not just whites. I mean, I'm speaking to whites directly in a sense, but I'm talking about the historical necessity of identity for everyone. That shouldn't really be threatening. The other thing is that if I were a black person or Hispanic or someone like that, I would want to attend something like this to see what makes the alt-right tick, what makes white people tick, what makes Richard Spencer tick. This is very important that they attend something like that and engage in this free exchange of ideas.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, they must be afraid of ideas, because that is what I'm going to be talking about.
I mean, I think they're afraid of your platform, obviously. Because I mean, come on, you march through Charlottesville, you chant "Jews will not replace us," you chant "Blood and soil." These are Nazi slogans. You're throwing up Nazi salutes. We all see this everywhere. It's you being a Nazi. Like, that's scary.
I'm not a Nazi.
How are you not a Nazi?
How am I a Nazi?
At what point when you are doing all these things are you not a Nazi?
At no point in my life have I ever been a Nazi. This is just a slur word. I mean, are you a commie? At what point are you not a commie? I mean, this is just not serious discourse.
No, I think it is, actually. I mean, if
A torchlight march, the Nazis were the only ones who ever did that.
No, I'm talking about you screaming Nazi slogans in Charlottesville.
First off, I don't go around screaming slogans at anything. And the slogan is actually, "You will not replace us."
Right.
And
I also heard Jews will not replace us.
You might have heard that. Were you there?
Yeah, I was.
Okay. Sure. Some people shouted that. So what?
I know, but you also felt comfortable being in a park with people hanging swastika flags and screaming, "Jews will not replace us."
Hanging swastika flags. I have seen one image of someone with a swastika flag, and no one has any idea who this person was. I was not on stage with them or anything. That was a public rally. Quite literally, anyone in the world could have attended Charlottesville. It was a public rally.
That's not true.
How is
People
that not true?
were blocked from going into the park. I actually saw Eli blocking, like you guys were, determining who was going in that park.
How do we determine that?
I mean,
If they were for or against, right? The statue
No-
coming down?
no
We
one-
said anyone who was against the statue coming down was allowed in.
That's Eli Mosley. He's the head of a white supremacist group called Identity Europa. Right.
So what would you have had me do? Would you have had me kick those people out into the crowd of violent Antifa
Also-
and get possibly murdered?
In
Is that
terms
what you
of
would have had me do?
in terms of the park, there was no one with the Nazi flag in Emancipation Lee Park.
I mean, I saw Nazi flags, not in the park.
I've
saw them on
seen
the street,
photos.
people
I've
going
seen
into the
photos
park.
of those as well.
Right.
But the fact is, it's a public event.
Right.
But in terms of the actual rally, who spoke there was nothing like that, and that's not what I'm about. That's never been what I've been about.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, it's like when I attend a public rally, and there's someone who does that. The idea that I'm responsible or I'm oh, that's my guy or whatever. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, if you go to any Black Lives Matter rally, there is very often violence, there's very often mayhem, and so on. And yet people seem to give them the benefit of the doubt in the sense that, well, there's some bad apples, but we understand your general message. But when it comes to the alt-right or identitarians, there's one guy with some flag and it's like, oh, they're all German National Socialists and they're going to do it. It's just very unfair.
Okay.
You have to address what I do. I mean, I am not in control of everyone within a square, within a radius of 10 miles or something. I mean, you have to judge me on my actions.
Okay. We're out in the middle of the country at an undisclosed location. Is that part of your MO for these events now?
Unfortunately, it has to be, yeah.
Okay.
We are in a different place than we were a couple years ago. I have given college speeches before that were attended by dozens of people, a couple years ago, and I would walk onto campus, I'd walk around campus, maybe get recognized by a couple people, but mostly not. And we were in a different place. We're in a new place now. And we need to think about the movement differently. I usually think, this is where I think the attack against me by Antifa on Inauguration Day, the punch, and so on, I think that was actually a very good thing. Because it woke up the whole movement that we need to get into a new gear, and we need to get more professional, and we need to also get a lot of more outside help. Like, there are a lot of people who are coming into this movement who are veterans, who have some kind of security experience as well, and we need to start relying on them.
Right.
And we are.
Okay.
That's where I came from. Look, Richard getting punched, I was in DC that day. I saw the limousine getting burned, and I watched one of my friends get beaten, headed to the hospital from the Antifa at the inauguration. And then I saw on Twitter, like, while I was there looking for Richard, because I didn't even meet him yet at that time, and like seeing Richard get punched made me change my view of this whole thing. I immediately got serious about it. I helped shortly after that Richard start organizing Charlottesville 1, Auburn, several other events that we did, dozens of events, and like it fundamentally changed the whole game.
Eli Mosley was one of the main organizers of the big rally in Charlottesville in August. It was the largest gathering of white supremacists in over a decade. And hours after the violence that day, and hours after a neo-Nazi drove his car into a crowd of counter-protesters, I talked to Eli on the phone, and he told me that his people were feeling real good right now.
And my goal since then was to push this into from an online anonymous movement, which it largely was, to an activist movement, a real life movement that's going to actually have real effects in the real world. And that's happened. We've accomplished that. It's not going back, and it's never going to go back. This is where we're here to stay, and people need to just get used to us. They just need to get used to our ideas. They need to get used to the fact that we're going to show up at colleges. They need to get used to the fact that we're going to poster schools, put up banners, and we're going to say we're going to tell people our ideas, and there's nothing that's going to stop it.
Okay, and that's segues into my next question for both of you, I guess. Why college campuses? Is it a recruitment thing?
Look, young people matter, and college campuses have been where political battles have been fought since the 60s and before it. And this is where political change happens. And fundamentally, it's where the most anti-white institution is. Academia has become a factory for anti-white individuals and to teach whites to hate themselves. So we're going to go to these schools, and we're going to go to these students, and we're going to tell them what's happening to them, and basically put it together, show them what's happening and tell them about it. When we go to these schools, we're not going to intimidate people of color or anything like that. What we're doing is we're going there to speak to our people and say, hey, look, someone is going to stick up for you, someone has your interests at heart, and that's us. You come join our movement.
But so this is what I keep coming back to. Your platform, you guys are white nationalists. You want a white ethno-state.
Let me.
But how is that not threatening to minorities on campus?
Well, let me talk about that real briefly, because look,
Black Lives Matter was no police.
Right, but look, the ethno-state is an ideal, and it is something very much like the ideal of Zionism, of a Jewish homeland for Jews in the 19th century. It was something that many people thought was crazy, that was totally impractical, impossible, and so on. But they had that ideal, and it was a motivating ideal. And a similar thing could be said about the idea of communism for the left in the 19th century, which was perhaps even more ridiculous in the sense of, oh, that's totally impossible, kind of thing.
An ethno-state is something Richard Spencer talks about a lot. It's kind of his ideal, and it's basically a racially or ethnically defined state, he says, which is another way of saying like a country full of white people.
So that, I think it's very important that we talk about the ethno-state, but we're not going to implement an ethno-state tomorrow morning. I mean, this is something that is probably not going to happen in my lifetime. I mean, in my lifetime, what is most likely going to happen is that we are going to reach minority status, that the anti-white bigotry that Eli was talking about is going to be ramped up to new levels that are unimaginable, and we need consciousness. So what we are fundamentally doing is raising consciousness. And even when we put forth a program, and I could talk about things that could be implemented tomorrow morning in a way that the ethno-state can't be implemented tomorrow morning. Ethno-state is post-American in many ways. Sorry, let me turn that off. I could talk about pro-white policies that I would like implemented tomorrow, which it very much could be. But what we are fundamentally about is raising consciousness and changing consciousness, changing how people think of themselves and the world and how they see the world. That is what this movement is fundamentally about, because I believe, and I think everyone in the alt-right believes, that changing consciousness is the key. When you change someone's mind and their way of understanding the world starts to change. New things become possible. Things change, their meaning of something changes. And so that's what we want to do. Also, in terms of universities, just to go back to that, I mean, it's not, recruitment, you could say it in that sense, but this is a young person's movement. I mean, I'm old for the alt-right at this point. Charlottesville 1 was actually a great example of this, which occurred in May, I think mid-May. And it was a 20-something and some 30-something event. There were, I think, a handful of baby boomers, and one of them was a speaker. As a, almost 40 Gen Xer, I was the old guy in the room. So, yeah, we need to go speak to young people, because young people they've lived this in a way that their parents haven't. If you were born in 1950, you would just have a fundamentally different idea of where we are and where we've been than someone who's born in 1990.
Right. So I just have a couple more. We talked about the inauguration and you getting punched. Has that happened again? And do you?
No, thankfully.
When you walk around, can you just walk around the street?
I do walk around the street a lot, but at the same time, things really have changed. I take certain precautions when I go out. I think differently. I have a certain awareness when I go out that I didn't have 4 or 5 years ago, where I could just walk around and be anonymous effectively. And when I do something that's a little more intense, like travel or things like that, I take other precautions.
Are you at all scared that the university might cancel the event?
Yes.
Okay, speak on that.
Okay, this is my experience with Charlottesville, is that I was not in on all of these meetings, but for what I've heard from Eli and other people, I mean, they spent hours talking with the police, coming up with plans, collaborating with them in good faith, giving them lots of details, doing everything that should be done. A state of emergency was declared long before any violence took place. A state of emergency was issued the morning of the event, and it was issued before we even got a chance to speak. And it was long before the death of Heather Heyer, long before any violence in the city. A state of emergency was issued. It was issued as an excuse to scuttle the rally, to in fact force us out of Lee Park into Market Street where there was violence. I mean, it was a very bad situation. I do fear that such a thing could happen again, in the sense that there's some incident, there's, a minor fist fight, or someone lights a trash can on fire, just something like that that's used as an excuse to lock down the arena, cancel the event, take me out. I am worried about that. Everything's about probability, and there's a chance that that could happen, and that bothers me. I do think that the likelihood of a successful event is high. That is what is most likely going to happen.
And what is a successful event for you?
A successful event would be that it's a packed arena, people have fun, I give a speech, we do a Q&A, we engage with the students, and there are no injuries. That is a successful event.
And
We make a splash in terms of the media and all that kind of stuff, but no one gets hurt.
Right.
That's a successful event.
right, I mean, I think that's all I have, unless you guys have anything. Okay. All right, well, thanks for talking.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
See you tomorrow.
See ya.